The race for State House District 12 will not be decided until November. Joining me is the incumbent Republican State Representative Wyman Duggan. Thank you for being here, Wyman.
Good morning, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
We met last week. I can't remember what city event. There's been a lot of things that the mayor's been doing of late, and certainly many of our state lawmakers have shown up. It's a nice chance to chat after the ribbon's cut or after the golden shovel gets used. So It was nice to see you. Now, you're running for re-election this November for District 12. So first of all, even though I've been around for 40 years, there's been some rejiggering of things. District 12 is where?
It's south central Duval County on both sides of the river. So on the east side, it starts at the foot of the Main Street Bridge, goes all the way to Julington Creek, generally west of the railroad track and Old St. Augustine Road and Hood Landing Road as it goes down into Julington Creek. And then on the west side of the river, it starts at the Ortega River and heads south to the Clay County line and follows Timuquana / 103rd for the most part, all the way out to Old Middleburg Road down to the county line. So on both sides of the river, kind of squat down on the county line.
But very suburban. I mean, you're talking community after community, home after home, subdivision, very much non-industrial, except for your major roads that have your retail, right?
And NAS Jacksonville.
Well, let's not forget that. That is 1940, good golly, 1942 or 43. And here's your little known fact, the original logo done by Walt Disney.
Very nice.
Very cool to realize that it's, and you know, home of a lot of things. Now, what about you? I've seen you. I don't cover state politics, but as a reporter for 40 years, I've certainly seen you at places. So who are you?
I'm Wyman Duggan.
Nice to meet you. But
born here in Jacksonville, born right here in Baptist Hospital. Both my parents worked in what was then the Gulf Life Tower as stockbrokers. But unfortunately, divorced when I was pretty young. Dad stayed here. Mom moved to Tallahassee. So I did all my, primary schooling over there. But moved back here right after law school in 1995 and been back ever since.
Oh, so you're an attorney?
Yes, I'm with Rogers Towers.
Probably have seen you or talked to you in years past about certain things they've done too, not as a lawmaker. Now, why did you decide that it was time to put your hat in the ring all those years ago to go to Tallahassee and represent your district?
So I have done quite a bit of appointed public service over that time span. Always very felt a compulsion to pay my civic rent, as somebody else once described.
Interesting way to say
it.
Yeah,
not original with me, but really I think captures the essence of the obligation. But always knew that at some point I wanted to attempt elected public service. So in 2017, the predecessor, the previous incumbent for the district, what was then District 15 prior to redistricting, announced that after 2 terms he was going to run for Attorney General. And so it was going to be an open seat. And so I declared in 17, I was elected in 18, re-elected in 20. Then we redistricted, re-elected without opposition in 22. Nobody else ran. And so now I'm running for my last term. In the House, you can do 4 2-year terms.
And there's no term limits for a state lawmaker?
Yes.
There is?
4 2-year terms.
4 2. So this is it for you.
Well, correct.
And you want
fingers crossed.
And then you want to wrap it up on a high note, I guess. You want to maybe see some things done. So what might be some of the priorities for the next 2 years, if indeed you do that 3-hour drive every week?
Right. So nobody has served all 8 years for this seat in quite a long time. For various reasons, people have left along the way. For example, Jennifer Carroll left to become lieutenant governor.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like the lineage of this seat in this district, and the lines move, but generally, this seat has not had somebody represented it for all 8 years in quite a long time. What that means is you don't get seniority within the legislative body to help deliver for your community, your district, in the way that you can if you're there for your last term and you're part of the leadership of the House. So what I have been blessed to be able to do, and this was a commitment that I made when I ran, I was going to stay the whole time. I wasn't ever going to leave to run for something else or if I was fortunate enough to keep getting reelected. And so it's think of it as like high school or college in the sense of you have freshman, sophomore, junior terms of 2 years. And then as in any organization that's hierarchical, the senior people have more influence and more responsibility and more ability to prioritize policy and funding resources to issues and areas that are important to them. And so the incoming Speaker of the House, starting in November, and actually on Election Day, our terms begin and end on Election Day, unlike many offices, is from Miami, but has a small leadership team, and I'm blessed to be on that team, and I'm going to use that that position and that opportunity to help the district and Northeast Florida in every way that I can.
So there's no new kid on the block syndrome here. You and those in that leadership team have already been through the trenches over the past few years. So therefore, you're comfortable. All of you should be comfortable going in for the next 2 years.
That's exactly right.
Now, Challenger Ben Sandlin was on the show on 8/7, criticized your performance on environmental issues. Your thoughts about that? We had our own environmental issues here. We had dehumidifiers running. I did not hear that in the newsroom, unfortunately. But what about the environmental issue question that he has?
Right. I watched and listened to that. He said I voted against Sierra Club proposals, which is not accurate. But more to the point, we as a legislature in the 6 years that I have been there, and with Governor DeSantis's support and leadership, have spent record amounts of funding on environmental issues and conservation issues. Probably at least $4 billion protecting just the Everglades. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into land conservation, land stewardship, allowing, for example, working family farms to be compensated for their future development rights so that they can just keep being a farm, but not have to sell it for development. Protecting the Indian River Lagoon from the red tide problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I would put the record of the Republican legislature. I mean, it's led by Republicans. We control the agenda in terms of funding, and I would put our record against anybody in the country in terms of prioritizing protecting our environment and conservation issues.
So let's talk about the specific needs that you might envision for your district, including, like you said, Mandarin, Ortega, very densely residential. What might be the needs that you'd have to deal with? Because we have a caller from Mandarin who might be able to add or subtract to that afterwards.
Sure.
But what do you see the needs?
Well, absolutely, septic tank conversion, septic to sewer conversion, particularly along, for example, Julington Creek, our water bodies. There are even in Ortega Forest, a well-heeled neighborhood, I would call it. Most of that's on septic. A lot of that's on septic.
Which is a scary thought when you consider how close they are to the Ortega River,
Correct.
Julington Creek, St. John's River, and other little creeks. Yeah.
Right, exactly right. And so we have that, obviously we have that issue in the urban core of Jacksonville from, promises of consolidation that were never fulfilled. But lots of other areas of town that were developed on septic tanks. And particularly if they are if the developments are 20, 30, 40 years old and those systems have never been replaced, cleaned, pumped out, but never replaced. Just, over time, they're going to degrade in terms of their efficiency.
Yeah, some years ago, Tecito Creek in Mandarin was a major septic tank leakage issue. We've got Susan from Mandarin, and she has a question about a regret you may or may not have. Susan, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if the representative regrets his vote on the vouchers. At the time it was being debated in the House, Angie Nixon put up an amendment to say at least limit it so that millionaires can't get the voucher, and the Florida Policy Institute projected that it would cost taxpayers $4 billion, and a recent article said that it is indeed costing taxpayers $4 billion. So I wonder if he regrets his yes vote on that bill. Thanks.
Thanks.
I recognize Susan. This is a hobby horse issue for her. I don't regret it at all. We fund students. We fund children. We don't fund institutions. And we as a state have made the policy preference that we are going to let parents, we're going to give them educational choice. It's not just school choice. We're going to let parents make those decisions about how they want to educate their children. They may want to homeschool them. My kids went through traditional public school, magnet public schools. So we have lots of options for parents, and we want to make sure that that's the parents who get to decide how they want their child educated.
Well, here's a grandparent who regrets forgetting that there's 2 charter schools on the way to this place and got caught in the traffic on the first day of school there. So
Right.
there.
Right. I left early this morning too.
So, uh, Nancy emails, can you explain the entity Citizens for Building Florida's Future, which has received over $500,000 in donations from Republican interests and the party? Are you the sole partner in this entity? This entity has donated only to extreme candidates for school board aligned with Moms for Liberty.
Sure, that's my PC. Most elected officials have a campaign account, which is the hard money, and then a political committee, which is the soft money recipient. So that is my PC. Mm-hmm. It's in the eye of the beholder. Extremist school board candidates. Again, these are 4 school board candidates who are wanting to empower parents. So let the voters decide. We'll see. I think those who are regarded as extremists are going to actually do pretty well.
Okay. Another question comes up here regarding some of the money that you have in your campaign donations comes from insurance companies. Does that impact your ability to tackle an insurance issue if it comes up?
Not at all. No, if you can't take their money and look them in the eye and tell them no, then you shouldn't be in this game.
And I've run some election campaigns as way back in the dark ages. That's always been an intriguing question to me. How do you say no to the man or woman who represents someone who gave you money?
Easily. If it's not the right policy, you just say, look, I understand your point of view. I mean, people forget that political contributions, as the Supreme Court has ruled, is a form of speech. Everybody has the right to support their candidate, to support their issue, give money to causes or candidates that they want to support. But at the end of the day, if you are that elected official, then you need to make sure that you understand why are you doing this job. And, for those of us who are doing it to look out for the interests of their community and their district and their region and their state, you have to be guided by those principles of what is best overall for the state, not what is best for that one person who's here talking to you about some issue that they care about.
Okay. Not ascribing that you have any other political ambitions in 2 years. Saying no to a potential donor to your next campaign, is that something you have to take into consideration, or you just go through?
I don't. I mean, I'm speaking for myself.
Okay. You sponsored a bill that abolished citizen review boards in at least 20 cities. I presume that would be police citizen review boards. Do you believe state lawmakers should be able to override what local governments want?
So that's an incorrect statement.
Okay. Again,
I know. And my opponent also incorrectly characterized it. It did not abolish the civilian review boards. They will still be able, any current or future civilian review board or police accountability board, whatever you want to call them, will be able to continue to do things that they are doing now. They can talk about policies, procedures, standards, training, culture, systemic abuses, patterns and practices of racism in the past. What they cannot do going forward is investigate allegations of misconduct of specific officers. That's all the bill does. It prohibits any of those organizations from receiving, processing, or investigating complaints of misconduct by individual officers.
And JSO, along with other agencies, does not tend to believe in citizen review boards, and in fact has quoted the sheriff himself that there are certain laws that really prohibit them. So that may be a moot point. Yes, no?
I'm not sure what the sheriff has said in that regard. I did note a poll that was on Florida poll results that were on Florida Politics recently with respect to Duval County that said 68% of the residents think JSO is doing a great job. And by a 65% to 30% margin, they do not fear being a victim of police brutality. So I don't think there's, a case to be made for a civilian review board here in Duval County.
With 90 seconds left, I said I was going to ask you this. Just your thoughts on the state of the presidential Democratic versus Republican race as it now winds down.
Well, I think it's unprecedented. You would agree in terms of things that have transpired on both sides. I mean, on the Democratic side, we have now a presumptive nominee who never received a single vote in any primary in 2020 or 2024 from any Democrat, and so now that's the person who has been parachuted in. I mean, President Biden pretty much acknowledged in an interview over the weekend that he was forced out of the race. So we've never seen really anything like that before. Even in 1968, Lyndon Johnson announced in March, then that was well before the primary season started. So there was a full and fair primary on the Democratic side back then. So we've never seen anything like that. Of course, on the Republican side, we've got a former president coming back, survives an assassination attempt. So it's unprecedented. We're kind of in uncharted waters.
I would think we'll all be watching that debate with a bowl of popcorn in our hands.
Let's hope there's more than one.
Well, you see. All right. So any other thoughts as you enter this race, as you go now toward the fall to run for your fourth and final state representative term?
It's just that it's such an honor and privilege to represent the district, the citizens of District 12 and the citizens of Jacksonville. I could not be more proud of our region and to be a part of helping represent it.
And it's been a very interesting year or two up in Tallahassee. So what are your legislative priorities for the next 2 years? What do you want to jump on and get going?
Well, so again, I've been able to help bring state resources to a lot of our great nonprofits and cultural institutions and institutions of higher learning. Going to continue to do that. I think Jacksonville is actually this is a bit of an issue for hobby horse issue for me. Commercial space. I think Jacksonville is extremely well positioned to capitalize on commercial space. I'm thinking of like SpaceX, those types of operation between the Cecil Field, which used to be in my district and which I still have a warm spot in my heart for, and then some the old St. Johns River Power Park site. Those two could be tremendous assets and resources that we could use to capitalize on getting a piece of the commercial space.
And we do
industry.
have a satellite company in Jacksonville, and we do have obviously the spaceport berth out there. So we do have that little bit there to worry about. Wyman Duggan, I want to thank you for a wonderful time talking with you. Now we've actually interviewed.
That's right.
I've interviewed you, so that's good. So thank you for being here, and